And people have been
Jen's
writing.
Like, I want to see that one.
It totally is. You know, one of the things that the writer brings up in that show, I want to say his name is Ishmael Reed. I hope I got that right. Is at the end of the show, Lin-Manuel Miranda is offered the opportunity to do a musical about Christopher Columbus and have an indigenous person play him. And when you think of it that way, you're like, oh shit, like maybe this is problematic. Things can be good and be problematic, and talking about them is the way we get better. So like, please, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda has enough money and success to like live on for the rest of his life. He's not going anywhere. Hamilton's not going anywhere. So let's talk about it. It's like the safest thing to talk about.
Okay. All right. So, Jen, if you want to watch him, you can watch it. Now I'm going to try to finish it, Ashley. Okay. Because
isn't it like 3 hours or something?
It was
stupid?
so fucking long. And it's
Yeah.
I'm not a musical person. This big old dyke is not down with any of that. But my girlfriend loves that stuff. So, but you know what? I don't think
it's
she
3
really
hours,
loved,
2 hours and 55
she really
minutes.
didn't.
I love musicals. I feel like they're all 3 hours, and I'm fine with that. I'm like, give me more songs.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, Broadway's definitely way too expensive.
That's, because everybody comes from out of town, and that's part of their big trip. So they can charge that money and get away with it. I think, honestly, our Hamilton tickets were part of our season tickets.
Yeah.
For the year.
No, and I'm sure that the touring, it was much more accessible.
It was like $110 for like the shit seats, and that's where my ass was. I was up in the balcony.
Yeah, but it just makes you wonder why being up in the balcony costs, over $100.
But man, the basic white bitches love that Hamilton, and I'm just like,
Yeah, it's because it's palatable. It's like, hey, this person of color accepts, like here, when you were talking about the alphabet soup earlier with like LGBTQ. Yeah. Which I hope I got that right. Yeah. I was kind of confronted with that recently for the first time with BIPOC, where I was like, is this bisexual people of color? Have you seen this? BIPOC?
No, but I think I would have thought bi.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Because I was like, thought, do I? Yeah, no. But it's actually Black Indigenous people of color. And so that's kind of this catch-all phrase that some people have taken issue with in the Black community because, and Indigenous, because Black people and Indigenous people have had both terrible but different histories in the U.S. So it's not the same institutionalized problem.
I don't think it is.
It sort of buckets it all together.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I think there are times
kind of agree with you
by
there
POC
for sure.
when you're being more general. It's okay to say by POC, but I think if you're specifically talking
political correct with that.
No, I think well, that's why I think it's better to just avoid it and say what you mean. And if you're referring to a Black person, it's okay to say Black.
Yeah. And
one thing that's evolving right now is papers of record, like the New York Times, are capitalizing the B in Black, and people are having negative reactions, but language changes and we'll all be okay. Literal used to actually mean literal. Now it means everything, right? I literally just shit myself.
I hate when people
Did I?
I'm literally, no, you're not.
So, all right. So, I'm going to try really quick. What else did Lin-Manuel do? Because I did never heard of him.
Wow. That I wish I
know
could
that's all you've had to deal with.
I wish I could. So he did the music for Moana.
I never saw
Disney movie.
Was that good?
Well, it's on Disney Plus. I didn't see it either, but people love it. Adults, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Moana. He did In the Heights before Hamilton. He's done like.
Honey, did we see In the Heights? I don't think we saw it. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, he was in Mary Poppins with Emily Blunt.
So
he's getting big Hollywood roles now. He's in there.
He's young. He's in his 30s.
Yeah.
I thought for sure he was gay.
He might
be. his wife actually went to our school as well.
Yeah, no, I was surprised to hear he was married to a woman, period.
She's a lawyer.
She is?
She's an attorney. Yeah, she's a really, like, successful, amazing, high-powered attorney.
Emmanuel.
He's Puerto Rican.
He's Puerto Rican. Okay.
So, and this is where it gets interesting, right? Because I think sometimes you see a person of color, and he made Hamilton, so Hamilton must be okay, right? But the Puerto Rican experience isn't the Black experience.
No.
It's not, and even his experience as a Puerto Rican who's grown up here in the U.S. is different than a Puerto Rican who's living in Puerto Rico. So, you know, one of the criticisms that he's gotten is that his politics and what he does for PR is really representative of what somebody here would want, but isn't representative of what's good for the island. So even Lin-Manuel can get it wrong, right? Or at least people can have different opinions about him and about the play. And I think that's more important than what Hamilton is, even the fact that we can talk about it.
Right. They tore down the Frederick Douglass statue here in Rochester. I know that Trump, we made Twitter Jen Rochester.
Wow.
Because Trump, you know, was like, oh, they're torn down.
The reason that I laughed just now is because when I told, you know, my fiance's aunt, who is white, that I was like, oh, I'm going to be recording this show with a host in Rochester. She was like, oh, are they interviewing you about the Frederick Douglass statue?
That's funny.
I was like, what the fuck?
But I
felt like, here we are.
Here I thought, because you have a Rochester police officer that you knew, right? On top, maybe,
It makes perfect sense in this context. It was just funny coming from her with no context whatsoever.
Yeah, right. And now here I am. I brought it up. Oh, are they interviewing you? But yeah.
Honestly,
I thought it was pretty.
If you could tell me more about it, that would be helpful.
You know what? They tore it down, and they're trying to find who did it. And this is how stupid I am, Ashley. I thought, what did he do? Why is he canceled?
That's what I was just reading it, and I was going to ask, and I'm like, why are they pulling down his statue? Like, it's not
like Frederick Douglass.
Because it was some racist piece of shit that probably did it, and because I have the cancel culture stuck in my head, Ashley.
See, that's what cancel culture does. Cancel culture is a trick. It's a trick. Calling it cancel culture is the trick. It's supposed to it's dismissive of people's concerns. It makes you not look closer. And looking closer, like, I mean, why don't you want to know what the hell you're talking about? Or
Can you
doing,
believe that?
You know?
And I thought, what did Frederick Douglass do? That they're canceling him.
Trump must have been really surprised that there was a statue of him, because a few years ago he thought he was still alive.
He thought he was alive.
So he's like, how did they put up a statue that quickly?
Yeah, but no, he's buried here too, Frederick Douglass. And a little story. My girlfriend, her sister had to do this huge family tree for, like, she's a school teacher, for a project for her class, right? She teaches here in the city. And she was talking to, like, this historian, and when the historian heard their last name, her and her sister, he said, were you guys related to Frederick Douglass? Because he had a lot of family with your last name that were hiding as white many years, you know. So I always thought, she's always like, I could be related to Frederick Douglass somewhere because of the last name. And they... And they hit out as well.
Think about if you were one of the descendants of Jefferson, who's living today, a descendant of someone who, you know, him and Sally Hemings, you know, an enslaved woman who you can't really have consensual sex with a slave, whether or not you want to call her your wife, or put her up in the house. So imagine having his descendants are walking around right now hearing that Hamilton is too precious and that Lin-Manuel Miranda got it totally right and we shouldn't even bring slavery into it. Wow.
Yeah.
That must be brutal. That must be brutal.
Yeah. I'm gonna say this was something else that when I was in South Carolina, I took a tour of the
plantation.
Yes, the Magnolia Plantation. And a friend of mine is like a huge historian. She loves all this stuff. She's like, let's take a tour of this. And I'm like, ugh. I got there. It was just stunning, beautiful. So I went to the tour, and we were looking at where like all the slaves lived. And it was, I'm not usually into history. I'm not, but I was like, it was very, very interesting. So there was a man out there working, and a very old man. I want to say he was close to 80. And it was his family were the slaves that worked there, and they stayed and continued to work on this plantation. All the family and the people that owned it paid for all the kids' college for the whole, but I thought to myself, like, why is he still working here? And when it's like probably his great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother, but they stayed through and maintained those grounds. They ran the whole thing. And the family put all the children through college. But
I mean, obviously I don't know about this particular situation, but a lot of people don't realize that even after slavery was supposedly abolished, a lot of Black people, it's not as if you could now go out and just get a job.
Where am I going? Right.
Yeah, a lot of these people were prevented from learning to read or write. Yeah. I mean, and of course, there wasn't just a sudden transformation in how people viewed Blacks, even though they were now free.
Absolutely.
So a lot of Black people turned to sharecropping, which was really just a form of indentured servitude, where they continued to work at the same plantation, but for some barely their wage. A lot of them still under the threat of physical violence, and with the implication that they had nowhere to go.
Absolutely.
So, that it could be in this case that, generationally, this family decided to do their own form of reparations, and put these kids through college. But that history of, Black people being enslaved and then really not having real full opportunities, even to this day, if you look at the wage cap and all of these companies coming out being like, oops, we accidentally only hired one Black person, it's all still there. So even just the fact that while I was planning my wedding, I had picked, on the Knot or something like that, and I'm picking through different types of venues, and they're like, oh, would you like to get married on a plantation? And I was like, I mean, of course, people get married on plantations, duh, but it really caught me off guard, let me tell you.
It's so gross.
I agree. And actually, while I was planning, they decided to take that tag off of the site, which is really interesting. They put up a message and said that they're no longer allowing people to search for plantation weddings, because, it's fucked up.
So it is a popular thing, because I'm not from the South where there's plantations.
Yeah, I mean, plantations are beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Just those trees
right.
alone. But with all the moss, and it was beautiful.
Right. So it's hard to imagine them as a site of vicious brutality for hundreds of years, but that's what they were. And it's not just the brutality; it's that the wealth that is there in the house was built on that brutality.
Yeah. And during the whole tour, like I say, the family through the generations that owns a plantation still runs it. And they didn't sugarcoat anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah.
A very in-depth tour, and just being in those houses and seeing
Rhode Island
lived. And
that's what they should
Rhode
be.
Island
they should be like museums, not like celebratory things. Like you can hang up twinkle lights.
A couple seasons ago on Top Chef, they did a challenge at a plantation, and they asked the one Black contestant how it felt to be there. And I was like, what the hell is going on? This is
Are you serious?